Buenos dias, bon dia, bonjour, buongiorno, and good day from Notre Dame. I'm trying to be inclusive of our growing international audience. Actually, I don't really know if we have much of an international audience, but I'm just trying to flatter myself in the process. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for taking time out of your incredibly busy schedules to be with us today. I'm really excited about interviewing Professor Carl Ackermann today. Who I think you're going to all, if you don't already know him, come to fall in love with him like all of our students here. It is close to 50 degrees right now. It's gloomy. It's very windy out, gusts of winds upwards of 30 miles an hour. And all of this is about to change tonight. We're supposed to get very heavy rains. And then for those that are coming out for Junior Parents Weekend, which is this weekend, we can't wait to receive you to campus. Just know that the temperatures are going to fall Friday, Saturday, and Sunday into the single digit area. So it's going to get really cold out here. So come prepared, but there's not supposed to be after through the night much more precipitation. So you should be able to get in and out of South Bend just fine. And we can't wait for this great celebration on campus this weekend. You guys know that there's 3 big weekends for families, right? In the 4-year tradition. One is the welcome weekend, or the orientation weekend, as we used to call it. And then there's Junior Parents Weekend, where at this point, the students host their parents back to campus and are able to show them a glimpse of their lives. And it's a wonderful weekend. And then, of course, the commencement weekend, which comes in May, our 3 kind of Notre Dame monumental weekends. It's exciting. If you are available tonight, our men's basketball team that's 18-7 and a 4-game win streak is playing home against Boston College, and we are tied for first place at 11-3 in the ACC. So it's a big game, and if you get a chance, I think it's at 7:30. No, 7 o'clock. It is. Tune in to ESPNU if you can't make it back to campus. So on that note, I am pleased to introduce Professor Carl Ackermann. He is the Terry and Joyce Nolan Professor for Excellence in Undergraduate Education Instruction, and he's a teaching professor of finance. Professor Ackermann teaches financial management and personal finance to our undergraduate students. He crusades against excessive fees in the investment industry. I'm for that. Who doesn't want excessive fees, unless maybe you're in the investment industry? And redirecting them to our students to also, through their great work, fight poverty and despair as part of their mission. Carl has over a dozen major awards for teaching excellence and service. Nationwide, he is a favorite professor according to Bloomberg Business Week and also Poets and Quants. And what's fascinating about him is you would think as a finance professor, he's just a quant, but he's got a lot of poetic side to him as well. He teaches a sophomore class, and yet he has been on multiple occasions the recipient of the Senior Class Fellow, which is voted by the senior class as a professor or somebody who has most influenced them and with the spirit of Notre Dame. I have a chance to meet with lots of students in this office, and invariably one of the questions I ask them is, who's a professor who has just jumped off the page for you? And anybody who has had Carl Ackermann always points to him. He is one of the master professors among a great teaching faculty, where teacher evaluations are the highest they've ever been on record. Carl stands out, and we are really pleased to have you with us today, Professor Ackermann. Thanks so much for joining us from your office in the Mendoza College of Business. Tell us a little bit about your Notre Dame story and what brought you to Notre Dame, and how long have you been with us?
Yeah, thanks, Lou, very much. Before I forget to answer the last part of the question, I've been here since 1998, so I'm here now in approaching 25 years here on campus. I'm also happy that you mentioned Mike Bray and another big game for men's basketball tonight. because Mike and the Leprechaun paid me a surprise visit in class last Tuesday. It was a surprise to the students. It was prearranged with me, and they just burst through the door and handed out a bunch of tickets and threw out a bunch of T-shirts, and it was quite a festive moment for the students. So, Lou, first of all, I'm sure you're very admiring of the sterility of my office here in the background, and that's intentional. I want you to know that this is, here in the Mendoza College of Business, right? Hard-nosed, hard scrabble, blue collar finance. And I also wanted to mention that I prepared for this. And there are a few things, themes and thoughts that I want to mention along the way. So occasionally I will look down at my notes just to make sure that I don't miss anything that's really important to me. So to answer the other part of your first question, Lou, and thanks again for having me. Like everyone else, I've always been enamored with Notre Dame. It's a mystical place, and that magical feeling for me started when I watched the Lindsey Nelson football highlights on Sunday mornings back in the day. And what a brilliant decision that was to air those, to make Notre Dame such a national brand. The Joe Montana Cotton Bowl comeback, for example, left an indelible impression on me. So I've always been a huge fan of Notre Dame sports, but I really wanted to come to Notre Dame as a faculty member because I desperately wanted to be at a values-based school. So here, our work is about so much more than just education. It's about serving the greater good. Mm-hmm. So, for example, when I show students how to accumulate money most efficiently via investing, it's not at all about doing that so they can buy more material things. Mm-hmm. It's about how they're going to use those funds to make the largest difference in the world that they can by helping others, especially those in the greatest need.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. Now, you studied at Amherst College, one of the great liberal arts schools in the country, and went on to get your PhD at the University of North Carolina. Where did you find this burning passion for economics?
Yeah, great question. As I'm sure they'll all be, Lou. So thanks very much for asking it. Economics for me was just at the time process of elimination. So I was most interested in science, but I also wanted to play sports, particularly soccer. And the science lab courses conflicted with soccer practice times. So I settled on economics because there were no lab courses and no conflict with athletic practice times. And that just turned out to be very fortuitous because economics turned out to be tremendous training for what I do today. And then at the time I decided to go on for a PhD, I was actually teaching high school in the greater Boston area. And I just absolutely loved that job in every way. But I looked around, and one thing I noticed is that almost all of the older teachers were unhappy in their teaching jobs there at the high school level. Mm-hmm. And primarily, I think, because of the difference in age between them and the students. And I just had no reason to believe that my fate would be any different. So I thought, if I go on for a PhD, I can teach at the university level, and then there will be a research component to that job, which will keep me, intellectually stimulated over time. Of course, then the big decision was what field, right? Mm-hmm. And I was really torn. I was really fascinated by both finance and also astronomy. Hmm. And I couldn't decide which to go into. And so I remember I had this discussion with my wife. And she said, well, why don't you go to the library? There was no real internet back then. Why don't you go to the library and get some information on the jobs that are available in those two fields in the coming years? I remember I picked up this reference text, and it was called Jobs Rated Almanac. And it gave a projection about how many jobs would be available in each of 988 potential career fields. I looked on that list. Astronomy was last, and there were 4 projected job openings in the coming year. I think you could have run a projector at a planetarium, something like that. And I looked at finance. It was first on the list. So I'm still not very practical. So I brought that information home to my wife, and I remember her saying, okay, let me get this straight. you're equally interested in these two areas, and one offers effectively no professional future, and the other one is the brightest possible future, maybe you should go into that one. And on the basis of that conversation, I did. And finance has been just a tremendous and fascinating field to be in all of these years. And I still get my fix of astronomy now and then. So, for example, we did travel down to see the total solar eclipse in 2017 in Kentucky. I highly recommend the next one in 2024. And it comes very close to South Bend, by the way. It goes through Fort Wayne, in fact. But I'll never forget. You may remember, Lou, that was the afternoon before classes started at Notre Dame. And so we saw the eclipse in Kentucky in the afternoon. And I thought, well, no problems in the afternoon. I'll be able to, drive back and we'll have plenty of time. Well, the traffic was just massive on the way back. So we drove all night. In fact, I didn't get to sleep for a second all night. We didn't get home until 8:30 in the morning. I took a shower, put a suit on, came in and taught 4 classes on the first day of class. That's not the way they're supposed to start the semester, Lou, with an all-nighter. But we made it work, and it was an unforgettable experience.
I love it. You can't take the astronomer out of the boy. That's terrific.
Right.
Well, you are known, as I mentioned, at the forefront as an iconic teacher. I don't think a lot of people understand how much work goes into that. Not only are you gifted and passionate about it, but you put a lot of work into being a professor of excellence. Where does your passion come from as a teacher, especially after 25 years of continuing to do this and staying invigorated and renewed each and every year?
Yeah, I think what really drives and motivates me is what I would call the multiplier effect. So, if I can come up with a new creative way of describing something, I have an opportunity to then share that with, the number of students that I'm teaching this semester, which is usually on the order of hundreds. So that I find that, very, very motivating for me, at least for the number of students that are listening to me at that moment. I have to say that I think I was destined to become a teacher. My father was a lifelong philosophy professor, and my mom a lifelong high school English as a second language teacher. And the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So, at first I tried a bunch of other jobs and careers, but in my late 20s, I accepted the gravitational pull of a teaching career. And Lou, I don't think I have talent for teaching, but I really do have a lot of motivation, and that really stems from so many of the boring classes that I sat through along the way in my education. I just vowed that if I ever taught, that I'd try to do it differently. And so so one of my techniques is every 20 minutes or so, I have a fun a brief break for the students that I think allows them to then really re-engage and reset. I think that enhances their learning tremendously, but it's hard work to come up with all that stuff. Often my wife will say at midnight, "Hey, are you ready for tomorrow? Can you come to bed now?" And I'll say, I have the subject matter ready, but I haven't made them laugh yet. And so it might take me another 3 hours to come up with that.
Right.
But it's easily worth it. And also, I think you have to improvise, right? We had a situation the other day where I'm teaching something called the time value of money, which is a really important subject in our course. And we were coming up to a really critical part of it. Well, there was a men's basketball game the night before that a lot of students went to, so they were tired. I could see it in their eyes. So I really had to wake them up for this one critical moment where we're talking about the most important thing. So I brought it. I have a bottle of water that I carry with me, and I just took the cap off, and I actually dumped the whole bottle of water over my head. In the classroom. And so it was cold afterward, walking outside. But boy, at that moment when I did that, I really had him, making that personal sacrifice. I really locked him on for what was such an important piece. And so
this
kind of roll with things like that.
This leads into the next question. You use unusual tactics and you employ humor to engage this generation, but you also use pranks. You're a bit of a prankster. And can tell us a little bit about how you have implemented these tools in a sense, but also why you do this.
Well, I think it's really important to, students have a lot of entertainment alternatives these days. So I think you have to do everything you can to try to entertain them and interest them in the subject matter. One of the things that you described there was, or one of the pranks that I do in some years is the following. There's in April or so, and unfortunately it's that late, but it is South Bend, right? So we're stuck with the weather we have here. But in April or so, we get the first really nice spring day when the weather's going to be really warm and the students want to be out on the quad, and you can anticipate when that day is coming. So by looking at the weather, and so what I do is I bring in this very large speakerphone on that day, and it allows all of the students in the classroom to hear the conversation, and then I just call a couple of students, and we hear their pathetic excuses for why they're not in class, and that's kind of a fun way. When attendance drops off that day, it's been 95% the whole semester. It drops off to about 60% on that day.
Yeah.
You have a choice. You can either read them the riot act, or you can send the message in a fun way. And by doing that on the speakerphone, it has the desired effect, because the next class, the attendance goes back up to 95% for the rest of the semester.
So what are some of the pathetic excuses you've heard over the years? They must be recurring.
Yeah, there are a couple I can't even that I can't even say on the air. But we had one fun one over the years. We had one fun one back in the day. This was one of the first ones where I called the student, and he picked up, and I said, "Hey, Tom, where are you at the moment?" And he said, "Actually, I'm on the golf course." And I said, "Tom, what hole are you on?" And he said, "I'm on 13. I said, "Okay, so this isn't like, you're on 17, you got stuck behind a slow group, you expected to be in class." I said, "This was a premeditated skip, right?" And he says, "Absolutely," right? Of course, the crowd goes crazy. So it's really fun when they play along.
He didn't come up with he told it like it is. He didn't come up with like, "Oh, I'm not feeling well, I got a sore throat," none of that stuff.
They do sometimes say, when they hear that it's me, they'll sometimes say, "Oh no, he or she is not here," in their own voice, which is fun. So we've had some laughs with that over the years. And then sometimes if they don't respond to my phone call, sometimes they won't answer a 574 number. I'll have one of their friends call them instead. And then really all bets are off, because then things get pretty informal. So for example, we had one friend call another friend who was skipping at that time, and ask him why he wasn't in class where he was supposed to be. And the second student says, for all to hear, "Class, F class." And so that was kind of just a fun moment for all who were there. So that's been an entertaining prank over the years.
So Carl, I when I was working at the homeless center years ago, I taught a little class here on campus on homelessness, where we met one day a week here on campus, and then one day a week, at the homeless center, and met a lot of people suffering from different things. I was shocked at the amount of time and effort that went into just teaching one class. Can you give our viewers a sense of how much time goes into preparing for these classes, the work that you do, the amount of time that you spend in individual counseling afterwards with your students, the number of letters of recommendations you write in a semester? I think most people from the outside have no idea how much goes into teaching just one class.
Yeah. It's full on. And, you're right. That's the public perception. So someone will see me at a summer picnic and ask, "How many hours a week do you teach?" And I'll say 12. And then they wander away for a while, and they come back and they say, "What do you do the rest of the week?" Right? As if I, work 12 hours a week. The answer is it's just round the clock. and it's 7 days a week, and it's year round. You can never do enough in a teaching career, because there are always more individual needs to be met, and often you can anticipate what those needs are, and reach out to students to have those kind of conversations. So yeah, the workload is really constant, and I keep in touch with many of my students over the years. And so all the time they're reaching back for advice, for career advice, and and often personal advice. And I really enjoy participating in that, and keeping in touch with them over the years. And with regard to letters of recommendation, sure, I probably write about 100 of those a year. I make a tremendous effort to make each one of those personal. So if I'm going to make a big effort to get to know the students, then I want to make sure that when I write about them, that it's colorful and tells a lot about who they really are.
Now, I don't know if this is accurate, but I've heard that before your first day of class, you have gone through the list and memorized virtually all the names of the students and some details about them. Is that accurate? And how many are in a typical class of yours? And I think you teach 4 classes a semester.
Yeah, no, that is accurate. And this semester I'm teaching 3 larger classes. Sometimes it's 4 in a semester, but this time it's 3 larger classes. So we have this wonderful tool called Online Photo, where we can at least get the photos of the students in advance and memorize what they look like. Sometimes I have them as sophomores, so their appearance has changed quite a bit since they came in for orientation. So what I do is I actually take a photo. These are just the A's and the B's from all the years. I take their photo on the first day, and then I will have them on the second day of class, when they're still unsuspecting, write all kinds of details about themselves on the back of those photos. And then I commit all of that information to memory for a lifetime. So I actually get to know them well. And for a lifetime. I have a lot of fun with that. Sometimes they'll write back after 15 years and say, I'm sure you don't remember me, and I can say, you're right, I don't remember you, but I do remember this and this and this and this. And they realize that I do know them very well. That's really fun to have that all that information on students. And I also make sure that I have a good piece of dirt on each and every one of them. That way, if any of them gets a little bit too confident, it's just a nice thing for me to have in my back pocket. For example, one thing I really enjoy doing is you'll have a student from O'Neill who I haven't seen for 10 or 15 years, and then they'll show up, with their spouse and family. And of course, they're terrified that I might mention their O'Neill nickname, which would be embarrassing to them and leave them a lot of explaining to do.
I love it. For all the grief that students give you, you got to give some of it back. But it's amazing the amount of work that you put into investing in our students. And it's much more than that classroom time, but it's all, and the better you are, the more students seek you out. And that clearly is the case for you. How has COVID, the last couple of years of teaching, how has that changed your teaching techniques? Have you, my guess is one of the greatest qualities of a good teacher is always kind of having a sense of how you're being perceived. If the class is tired, if the class is bored, if the class is distracted, you got to step up your game. You got to adapt and change, improvise, as you said. But during this COVID period, how have you had to adapt your teaching style? Have you used more humor? Have you tried to lighten things up? Are kids more? Where have you taken things?
It's a great question. And I'm happy that I have a lot of teaching experience from over the years. So I have a pretty good idea of how students are going to respond to things, because during the times they've been without the mask, you're not getting any feedback from them. Yeah. So, you're going through your class, but there's no opportunity for them to really participate, because you're in a big room and you can't, it's been forbidden to share a mic around that room. So you're not getting any visual feedback from them. So fortunately, over the years, I've learned a little bit about what works and what doesn't work. So that's something that doesn't bother me. They are definitely in more need of fun and humor in the classroom. But I really can't provide that in the classroom setting. And the reason is that my course is an introductory course. And so the follow-on courses are depending on me to cover certain subjects perfectly and well, so the students have that knowledge in the follow-on courses. But so where I can provide a lot more fun and humor, and I do feel like they're much more in need of it under the circumstances, is in office hours and in one-on-one meetings. And so we're consciously doing a lot more of that. And I think what you're trying to do is always be as approachable as you can be, so that students are going to come to you no matter what their needs are, right? And often completely outside the academic. And here's the kind of thing that I try to do to foster that. I have bought a collection of soccer jerseys from all over the world. So if my next meeting with a student is, with a student from El Salvador, right, I will slip into the El Salvador national soccer jersey, right, before the meeting. And, everyone from El Salvador knows exactly what that jersey is, right? So without a single word being spoken, when they come into my office, I'm saying to the student, I'm your friend. I'm here for you. How can I help you?
That's fantastic. So how many jerseys do you have?
Too many.
Too many. Do you have a sense,
for
Carl, of how many students you've taught over the 25 years, roughly? Any guess?
Oh, gosh. Great question. It's probably on the order of 500 a year. You're the math person, Lou, so I'll let you do that. What would that be? 12,500 students? Something in that region.
Incredible. What do you think is one of the most important characteristics of a great teacher, and then also of a great teacher of finance?
I think they're the same. And I think it's this. There's a finite amount of learning that could go on in a college class. So I think what you have to do is inspire students to learn on their own beyond the classroom. So look, I'm a professor, and I can tell you for certain that the best learning that people are going to do is, on their own, outside the classroom, when they're thinking about what they're interested in, and not when someone like me is directing them. I think back to the reading that I was doing on all kinds of subjects when I was trying to find a dissertation topic. That I think is the best kind of learning anyone can do.
That's brilliant. Not an answer I would have expected. Can you give us an investing tip? Given the fact that you teach finance, a lot of people are going to be all ears on this one.
Well, I think what's most important is to really take advantage of your employer retirement plan. That the matching contribution that your employer makes is free money. I'm sure you're very familiar with this, Lou, being here at Notre Dame, where the match provided by the employer is so generous. Right. I think people should always be sure to put enough into their employer retirement plan to get the full employer matching contribution. And then I think people should also pay really vigilant attention to the fees, the costs, the taxes of their investing. Minimizing those just mechanically, increases what will flow to you. And again, the other part I think is to think long in advance what you are going to do with those funds to help others and make the world a better place, so that when you have that opportunity, you don't have to think about it. You can immediately put it into practice.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful. You're such a memorable professor to so many students. My guess is that there's got to be some students over the years who kind of etched their memories into your soul. Who are some of those students that you might want to highlight?
Lou, they all stand out, and for unique reasons. I love them all. I've had nothing but joy in every single one of my interactions with a Notre Dame student. Nothing but joy. So let me not mention any specific names so that no one feels left out. But again, I think we have these moments. I remember a moment at that wonderful Elite Eight men's basketball game in Cleveland that we lost against Kentucky, and we were in that game the whole time. And there was a moment at that game when a bunch of students approached me, and they played the "Who Am I" game. Now this is hard, right? Because these people were about 15 years out of school, but fortunately, I was able to go down the line and name every person and give them a fact about each one of them until I got to the last person, and I said, "You weren't in my class," and that turned out to be right. And so I just think the students really appreciated that a lot. And our students are just so special. They do everything for a higher purpose. For example, when they're learning how to accumulate this money, they're really not thinking about that. They're thinking about what they can do with it, right, to help others in tremendous need. And so that's the reason why so many of them stand out in every way.
You put so much effort into teaching, and you do it with such a brilliant job. How do you relax? What do you do for fun?
There's not much of that, but we did something really different a couple of years ago. So 2 years ago, just before the pandemic hit, my wife and I bought a beautiful historic inn in New Carlisle, Indiana. It's a few miles from campus, and so the idea is to hold free, fun community events there that will, lift up that entire town and region. So things like the most sophisticated treasure hunt of all time, big screen movies on the lawn, the world's largest slip and slide, all kinds of, fun things like this. But the pandemic has shelved all of that for the moment, but that's just given us more time to plan. So we're ready, and we can't wait to roll all of it out. In fact, there are 3 Notre Dame students that have built an escape room at our house. And that's unfortunately not a good, pandemic activity, right? Because people would be picking up things but hopefully, there will be no more major variants in the months ahead, and we can still, they're seniors now. So hopefully we can still pull off a little run of that escape room during senior week and beyond.
I love it. You and Carol are parents to 3 children. And how do you think teaching has made you a better parent, and vice versa?
Well, first of all, let me just say that no one can replicate what I've accomplished in my marriage, because none of you could possibly have married up to the extent that I have. So my wife is just amazing. She's the best mom in the world. And she's just made tremendous sacrifices for my career. My wife was once a clinical pharmacist at the best hospital in the world. And when we moved to South Bend, she couldn't do that anymore. And so she's devoted most of her life to raising 3 incredible children. When you're teaching right, there's just no limit on how much time you can put into your job. And I just could never have done any of that without such an awesome and supportive partner. And let me just say the other way, what my children have helped me in my teaching. I had the very good fortune of growing up in a household where I would say I was effectively raised by civil rights activists. Mm-hmm. So many of the changes that we're seeing in society now, I believe, are long overdue. So none of that has been any kind of an adjustment for me, because that's where my mind has been my entire life. My kids really keep me honest on language. So, if we're talking at home and I use a word that isn't currently conventionally acceptable, they'll let me know immediately. So that's been a big plus in reforming some of the things that I might say that, haven't really withstood the test of time.
That's fantastic. So it seems that you've used your position as a professor of finance as a way to kind of teach eternal values, values such as service and integrity and giving back. How do you view your role, not just as a subject matter professor, but teaching some of these eternal values?
Yeah, I think it's really important, really, really important, because so many of the students that major in finance will, come into, tremendous financial resources, which represents an opportunity for them
Mm-hmm.
to do large and tangible good in the world. I don't think they're going to get too much of that influence once they leave here. So we really do everything we can to instill that while they're here. This is a comment I often get on teaching evaluations. I'll get this comment where I didn't think introductory finance was the course where I would learn so many of these values and how important they are. And I take that as really the highest compliment.
That's fantastic. So a lot of students come to you for advice. They know that you care deeply about them, and you transmit this aura of values, integrity, service. They must come and ask you about, what should I major in? What should I do? Where should I go? How do you guide them in those kinds of questions?
Well, the majors that students ask me about primarily are the business majors. So I should probably focus on that. Internship and job opportunities are really good for all of the business majors. So I think students should choose the major where they have the most passion for the subject matter.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that so important? Well, before they choose their major, they're learning a variety of subjects for 10 hours a week, right? Anyone can fake almost anything for 10 hours a week. But once they choose their major, they're going to be doing one subject for maybe 40 or 50 hours a week. They better like that subject, or they're going to be miserable adults. So I really do encourage them to choose the major in the area where the subject matter captivates them the most. About the finance major specifically, finance is a challenging and competitive major, especially here at Notre Dame. So if someone's really on the fence, I really encourage them not to choose finance, actually, because I think having a lukewarm interest in something is just not a good place to be when you're surrounded by people that have passion for a particular subject.
That's great. Now, you've been known, and I hopefully am not revealing any secrets here, but you've been known to occasionally don a costume of sense, and ostensibly to keep the students loose. We know in athletics, if somebody's tense, they're not going to play their best. They've got to be loose. Tell us a little bit more about how you engaged in some of these unorthodox teaching tactics.
Well, how true, Lou. These days I have many freshmen in my courses, and that means in the fall semester that my first exam is often their first collegiate exam. So you can imagine the nerves that they go into with that. Yeah. So we do everything we can to try to break that tension and allow them to relax and do their very best work. Over the years, one of the go-tos has been for me to run through the first exam yelling and screaming in a gorilla suit, which seems to accomplish exactly that and gets them to relax. I have to tell you that gorilla suit prank has evolved a lot over the years. The students here are really smart. They're fun. They're mischievous. So you really can't be too predictable with them or you'll get burned. The third year I did the gorilla prank, when I ran into the room, students were holding up bunches of bananas. I should have known there that they were already on to me, because when I tried the gorilla suit prank the following year, the moment I slipped into the room in the gorilla suit, a student slipped out and he ran to the men's room and he grabbed the dress clothes in there that I had slipped out of. And, of course, those dress clothes were returned to me the next day, nicely folded and pressed outside my office door, right? The Notre Dame way. Okay. But what it meant is for the duration of the exam, I had to rot in that gorilla suit. And by the way, have the provost of the university see me in it, who happened to walk by the exam that night. Plus, it's about 200 degrees in that gorilla suit. So after that experience, it's been students in the suit. But the students, they hear about this and they always expect more and more. So it's escalated over the years. One of the years recently, we had a banana saunter in during the exam, someone in a banana suit saunter in. And then about 5 minutes later, we had half a dozen students in gorilla suits come in and start to sort of corner the banana. And then unknown to the gorillas, we actually had in the room taking the exam 13 other students who had banana costumes under their clothes. And so they, whipped off their outside clothes and suddenly they were in the banana suit and they yelled, "We can't let this happen." And they raced over.
This is all during a final exam?
During the first exam, right? And so then they drove the gorillas out of the arena. The one thing that the students don't know that we did, though, is sure, we have this prank, but we have to make sure there's no exchange of information. So I had actually someone lying on the roof of Stepan Center to make sure that when those students were outside the arena before they came back in, they weren't saying, "Hey, what's the answer to number 3? Is it C?" and so forth. So we trust, but we always monitor, just to make sure there's nothing like that going on. So that's been a particularly fun one. Obviously, I'll just mention one other real quick that we did last week. Toward the beginning of the semester, there's always a moment when maybe half a dozen classes and where a student shows up late for the first time, and that's kind of a key moment where you're trying to stress to the students, it's important to be on time to the extent you can. So the student could come in late and you could again read them the riot act, which is going to have no effect on Notre Dame students because they're way too smart. What we do instead is we set it up so that when that person comes in, the entire class stands up and gives that person a standing ovation. You've never seen a redder face than that student that walked in late. And, again, it's a fun way of sending an important message to be on time. And again, it sends the same message, but it does it in a fun way, which is always the goal to the extent you can do it.
When somebody is as good at what they do as you do, I'm sure there have been countless opportunities along the way that have been presented to you to go to this university or that university or enter into this new line of work or that. Why have you stayed at Notre Dame for almost 25 years and continue to challenge yourself, to rejuvenate yourself, reinvent yourself, to become the incredible teacher that you are?
There have been almost none of those inquiries. And I think part of the reason for that is that everyone knows how thrilled I am to be here and that I would never leave this job voluntarily. Just don't tell my boss or I'll never get another raise. But no, I would never even consider, it's interesting. When I did my graduate work at the University of North Carolina, which was an amazing place to be and do that work, I wanted to go to the best school I could go to where I knew that the faculty would work with me. And that's what the PhD program was at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. It was just an amazing experience in every way. And I had the best faculty advisor, PhD advisor anyone could ever have. I remember when I left there and I came to Notre Dame, and I so desperately wanted to come to Notre Dame, but I always thought, where you do your PhD always holds a lot of sway. So I thought, if they ever, when I first left UNC, I thought if they ever reached back to me, I would go there in a heartbeat. That would be the dream, right? Because that was the training that I received. But I remember I did get that offer to return in my third year here, and I just didn't even consider it because I've been so overwhelmingly happy here. Just another reason why I've been so happy here is this. I think our students will do more to improve the state of the world than any other students. And here's why I think that. Sure, you could argue that there may be a couple of schools, Harvard and Stanford, maybe where the graduates of the university might do a little bit better professionally than they might do here at Notre Dame. And sure, you could argue that there might be a couple of deeply religious schools where whatever the students come into in terms of resources, that they would do more, to share those to improve the greater good. But in combination of those two factors, you would never find a group of students that would accomplish nearly as much as our students will. And so that's why to have an opportunity to be around those kind of students and have the opportunity to maybe influence them in even the tiniest way, that's the greatest gift I could imagine. And so I would never give up something like that voluntarily.
We're really privileged, Carl, to work at a place that has in its founding DNA the vision of Father Soren to not just be one of the great universities in the land, but one of the most powerful means for good in all of society. You embody that exceptionally well, and you pass that spirit, that vision, that mission on to our students in a way that is extraordinary, exceptional. We are forever in your debt. We're one of the things I love working at Notre Dame, and I've been here now almost 23 years, is I get to be around people like you. And you inspire me not only to do my job better, I'm humbled by your example, but you make me want to be a better person and to live out my faith and my beliefs more fully. And to be surrounded by people like you is why I stick around here, and just hope that I can just get to be a little bit better, each day. And I got a long way to go, but thank you for your example. Thank you for your abiding commitment to our students and the mission that through Notre Dame we can make this a better world.
Well, thanks very much, Lou, and know that the inspiration is more the other way around than the way you described it. You're just an overwhelming influence to me, and there are so many others around campus, that I feel that very same way about. And I won't. There are people that I won't see, for years. Yet I know they're on campus, and I know that they're striving for the same thing that I am, which is to improve the lives of our students and help them be the best ambassadors that they can be when they go on and when they go out and take on the world. So I do really feel that the solidarity with so many of those people around campus.
Thank you so much, Carl. And we get to do all of this under the watchful guise of Our Lady on the dome. And so, as we always do with these sacred encounters, we like to close with a prayer to Our Lady. So please, wherever you are, join in. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Thank you again, Carl. Thank you all for joining us today. God bless, go Irish, and let's make an impact, a big difference in this world that is so deeply in need.